Hello. That was beautiful. Before I begin, I just want to note quickly that on the back table, there is some literature from the Nature Conservancy of Canada. Our family is encouraging anyone who wishes to make a donation in Dad's memory to support that organization. I've been in touch with some folks from the Nature Conservancy, and they've been amazing. And they have worked out a deal that all donations made in my dad's name are going to go specifically to the Whitemouth River Watershed Preservation Project, which is a 20-year plan to protect and preserve the biodiversity and the ecological health of the area around the Whitemouth River. I think a lot of folks in this room know that river was very special to my dad and to our family through him. There's also a gray wolf population in that area that the Nature Conservancy is helping to protect via their plan. So it would mean a lot, I think, to all of us if Dad's life could give way to a legacy of some kind, and I think none would be more fitting than helping preserve the areas he loved and the nature he loved for future generations. So before you go, please take a minute to check out some of the information on the back table. Thank you. Now for the speech. You'd think after I put 100 inches of copy in the Saturday Free Press that I wouldn't have anything more to say, but the reality is that is scratching the surface, because that's maybe 1% of the things I wanted to say about my dad. Half 1%. The important thing to know is that for as long as I can remember, my dad was more popular than me. And over the years, I became so accustomed to this and to being eclipsed at my own social events. One of the most vivid examples I remember was I was 17 and Dad came to one of my band concerts. And after it was over, I couldn't find Dad, so I'm looking for him everywhere. And I finally find him talking to this guy who at the time was widely acknowledged and understood to be the coolest guy in school. I was not the coolest person in school, I regret to say. But here Dad is chatting away to this guy, and they're catching up like two old friends. And, oh, what'd you do? I was just back from a ski trip, and they're chatting. And after the cool kid left, shakes his hand. So good to see you again, Dr. Martin. Dad turns to me and says, well, you know, that John is such a nice young man. I looked at him and I said, Dad, he won't even talk to me. Which is true. And that trend continued well into adulthood, right up to this summer. I was always complaining to him that he had a busier social life than me, and that was not a joke, because trying to schedule a lunch with him was always a delicate process. It would be like, I'd love to go for lunch. Oh, but I'm meeting Ed for lunch on Thursday, and our friends are coming for dinner Tuesday, and then I have an event on Wednesday. On Monday's out too, but maybe we could look at Tuesday morning? And I'd be like, okay, Dad, you just tell me when you're free and I'll show up, because I've got nothing better to do, apparently. But the fact is, everyone loved to be around my dad. Everyone who met him came to love him, and sooner rather than later. He was warm, he was wise, he was the funniest person I've ever known, with that kind of effortless, weird blend of really sharp wit and really dad jokes that I've never quite been able to figure out how he had the balance right on that, but it was perfect. And it was easy to be around him. Over the years, I would run into students of his on occasion through my work or elders, and sometimes after pouring out to me what a great professor he was and how much Dad had influenced their life, they'd sort of say with maybe a bit of hesitation, oh, he must have been a great dad. And I think there was a little worry that maybe there was like a dark side to the man they didn't know about. Like maybe they didn't want to have their image of him tainted. And the fact is that, well, Dad was, as I have so often been told, an amazing professor, an amazing therapist. He was an even better father. He gave me everything and then some. I couldn't have asked for anything more. He was the person I looked to first and most for guidance, the first person I called when I was in trouble, the first person I called in celebration, and the constant, steady presence of my life that made all of its ups and downs bearable. At the burial, when Richard from Integrity asked us to share a memory, I had this realization that I actually couldn't pick one, because my whole life feels like highlight reels of my dad. My kind of world revolved around him. He supported all of my interests. We went camping, we played video games, and he chaperoned my field trips. And he took me to the graduation house at the University of Manitoba when I was a little kid, because he wanted me to see a world beyond the relatively homogenous enclave that I had grown up in, which I feel like was very ahead of his time in terms of that. He labored for hours making very ambitious Halloween costumes for me. He taught me how to play chess. When I got interested in nautical disasters when I was a kid, he went out and bought a model Titanic we could build and paint together, you know. And as I got older, only the scheduling aspect changed. He always had time for me, quality time and meaningful time. And he gave endlessly of his love, his support, and his wisdom. He was there for me through everything, and when I struggled, it was Dad who changed his expectations. One thing I think about a lot, and always have, is the day I told him I wanted to quit university. Because it was midway through my first year. I was terrified of telling him because he valued education so much, and because I grew up on campus and I'd always felt the expectation was that I would, complete a degree myself. But at the same time, I was so unhappy, and I just hit a point I knew I couldn't do it anymore. So he was driving me home from campus one day, and I finally just broke down crying and told him I couldn't go back. And I'll never forget how he reacted, because I was terrified, I was shaking, and Dad was just quiet, just peaceful. Quiet, and his face looked a little sad, and then it got softer, and then he said, you know, maybe university isn't the right path for everyone, and maybe it's not the right path for you. And that moment to me kind of captured the magic of Dad as a father and a person, and the one I have tried to model my life after, which is that Dad always met me where I was at, and he met the people in his life where they were at, and he never imposed his ideas on me, whether in life or in politics. He only offered his guidance. Dad never wanted to enforce standards on people. He just wanted to help people find their own way of being and their own way in the world. And where that vision differed from his own, he just changed direction so he could walk alongside them. He did have one flaw, which was that he looked on the bright side too much. And this is in fact the source of the only fights we ever had, because there were a few times in life I had to be like, Dad, things are not okay, and we'd have to hash that out a little bit. But that was his way, you know. He just wanted everything to be good, and he wanted everybody in his life to be okay, and I wouldn't have changed that for the world. The fact is, I keep saying this, I have no idea how to go on without my dad. I keep saying that, hoping a plan will emerge, but over 1 month later, I still have no idea. And by the way, if anyone here knows a therapist, anyone? I'm looking for one, maybe someone knows. All I know is this. One thing that's become really meaningful to me, and that I hope to carry forward, is I want Dad to have a legacy. I want him to be remembered. He was but one life in a really big world, but he was special. He left this world a little bit better than he found it. He left the people in his life a little bit better than he found them. And through nothing more than the strength of his character, the warmth of his spirit, and the compassion that informed everything he believed in. I remember once, not long after he retired, he reflected on his career. We were just driving around talking, and for the first time as he talked about his work, there was actually a little bit of sadness that was creeping into his voice, and I could tell he missed teaching. He told me he could feel his life getting a little smaller now that he wasn't practicing. And he most of all worried that the things he championed when it came to therapy and teaching would be forgotten. I remember telling him then that I thought he underestimated the impact that he had made, because I knew how people talked about him. And I knew what his former students said about him and the impact he had made on their way of thinking. And when I look around this room now, I know that I was right, because Dad's legacy is here, and it's far beyond this room too. And that's because Dad gave so much of his time and his wisdom to the people in his life. Everyone here carries a little piece of him with them too. I know many lives here were shaped by the time they shared with Dad, and I know that many of his former students and colleagues now carry the same values that he championed forward in their work and their teaching and their practice. So I hope that as you go out into the world, you will keep that flame burning, to love without hesitation, to listen without judgment, to find the beauty in everyone and make sure the time we spend together is always meaningful time. That would be the greatest testament to Dad's life. And to take those values and use them to see that the world is bigger than ourselves, that everyone deserves a chance at happiness, that we must care about future generations, the environment, and we must reject the politics of ecological or human destruction. If we keep those flames burning and pass it on to the people around us and our children, then Dad's spirit will never be extinguished. Thank you so much.